There are still places on Earth where height is not an obstacle, but a destiny. Cliffs rising like living walls. Rock faces where there are no paths, no ropes, and no safe places to set your foot. Caves so high that not even a bird would dare build its nest there. And yet, entire peoples chose to live in those abysses. Today we will travel through cliffs, mist, and mountains where life clings to the impossible. High on those walls, where the wind cuts your breath and light barely reaches. These cultures built their homes, their temples, and even their tombs, not out of whim, not out of exoticism, but for a deeper reason: to protect themselves, honor their dead, or remain close to what they considered sacred. Before we continue, subscribe to CronoPlanet and activate the bell so you can be part of this community that explores territories as remote as they are fragile. Because what you're about to discover today may change the way you understand altitude, solitude, and human resilience. Stay until the end, because the final culture on this journey lives in one of the most inaccessible landscapes on the planet, and its relationship with high-altitude caves is one of the most extreme and least known in the world. Now then, let's begin. 1. Dogon, Mali, the sacred cliffs of Bandiagara. Imagine walking across a dry Sahel plain and suddenly finding yourself in front of a rock wall that rises almost 300 meters into the sky. It is a natural rampart stretching for more than 200 kilometers. A cliff that does not seem made to be inhabited. Yet for centuries, it has been home to one of the most enigmatic peoples on the African continent, the Dogon. Along the Bandiagara Escarpment, declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site, mud houses, granaries, and sanctuaries stand perched directly on natural ledges. Some of these structures are so high that it is hard to believe anyone could reach them without modern ropes. And yet, this is where they live, perform their rituals, and guard the memory of their ancestors. The wind pounds against the rock, lifting dust that mixes with the smell of roasted millet and shea butter. The paths are narrow and winding, and every step feels like further proof of the bond between this community and the mountain. In many stretches, the ground is not soil, but solid rock carved by generations. Long before the Dogon arrived, these walls were already occupied. The Telem, and even older people, laid their dead to rest in caves located in almost unreachable spots. Archaeologists have found human remains perfectly preserved by the escarpment's dry climate, as well as baskets, plant fiber ropes, tools, and textiles that speak of a civilization that vanished centuries ago. Their mummified bodies were later discovered by the Dogon, who inherited this vertical landscape without really knowing how the Telem managed to climb to places where even modern climbers would struggle today. That question remains alive. What techniques did they know? What tools did they use? What spiritual or practical motivations led them to root their lives into the rock? Dogon architecture is not just beauty. It is strategy. For generations, these heights protected the community from slave raids and enemy clans. Living up high meant surviving. The houses are laid out in patterns that allow people to see who is approaching from a distance. And the granaries, built on pillars of stone and mud, are designed to keep grain dry and out of reach of animals. They even follow a symbolic division. Female granaries store food, personal items, and seeds. Male granaries hold weapons, tools, and ritual objects. Each one represents a balance between life and protection. Even the doorways of some houses are built so low that you are forced to bow to enter. If an enemy tried to rush in, they would immediately lose the advantage of surprise. At the heart of every Dogon village stands the Tuguna, a men's meeting house. Its roof is built intentionally low. No one can stand upright inside. The reason? To prevent fights. If someone tries to stand up in anger or raise their voice, they hit their head on the ceiling. It is a physical reminder that problems must be resolved without violence. Dogon cosmology is deeply tied to the escarpment, to its shadows, its cracks, and its elevation. According to accounts collected by Marcel Griol and Germain Dieterlen, they speak of the Nomo, primordial beings who came from cosmic waters. Their symbolism weaves together fertility, rain, birth, and the organization of the universe. Some of these narratives include details about the star Sirius, orally transmitted elements that have sparked scientific debate. This is not technical astronomy, but ritual knowledge passed down through centuries. For the Dogon, height is not just space. It is frontier, refuge, and sanctuary at the same time, a place where the visible and the invisible meet. One of the most recognizable symbols of their culture are the Kanaga masks, used in funerary ceremonies called Dhamma. These dances mark the passage of the soul into the world of the ancestors, and their performance on the edges of the escarpment turns the entire landscape into a ritual stage. Picture for a moment the echo of drums bouncing off the rock, the white masks drawing shapes over the void, the robes fluttering in the wind. It is not just a ceremony. It is a language between two worlds. The masks are part of a broader ritual system in which each figure represents forces of nature, mythical animals, or elements of the cosmos. Some of them are used only once every few decades. In recent decades, central Mali has suffered tensions and conflicts that directly affect Dogon villages. Some routes have become dangerous. Many families migrate to the cities, and certain traditions are practiced less and less often. The balance between past and present grows fragile. Even so, when you look up at the escarpment from below, with the houses embedded in the rock, the granaries hanging over the void, and the ancestral caves, it is impossible not to feel that this place is more than just a home. It is a living archive, a form of cultural resistance against the passage of time. And here, a question becomes inevitable. What leads an entire people to turn a cliff into their refuge, their temple, and their identity? Perhaps the answer lies in what we will discover at the next destination. Because if this cliff already seems extreme to you, just wait. What comes next does not belong to the world of the living, but to the silence of those who have already departed. Figures that do not walk, do not breathe, yet continue watching from above. Bodies placed on walls where even light struggles to reach. All of it literally suspended over the abyss. Can you imagine what kind of civilization would do something like that? And why? 2. Chachapoya, Peru. Sarcophagi suspended above the abyss. Picture a mountain range where the clouds don't simply pass. They get trapped among the trees, a territory where the sun appears only for brief moments before disappearing again behind the mist, where the mountains seem to breathe vapor, and the wind carries a murmur that feels as if it were coming out from the cracks of time. This is the atmosphere of the Andean cloud forest, one of the most mysterious and fragile ecosystems in South America. In this place lived one of the most fascinating peoples of the Andes, a civilization that chose the heights to protect itself, to communicate with the sacred, and to transcend. Spanish chroniclers of the 16th century called them the dwellers of the clouds, impressed by their ability to move through ravines where a single misstep could be fatal. On these cliffs, more than 50 meters above the ground, stand the Karajía sarcophagi, anthropomorphic figures made of clay, fibers, stones, and ochre pigments, rigid and solemn, gazing over the valley from natural balconies that are almost invisible. From below, they look like motionless, silent guardians. But just by observing where they are placed, you realize that what their builders achieved borders on the impossible. There are no wide ledges, no traces of permanent scaffolding, no hidden paths carved into the rock. And yet, they are there, a technical and spiritual feat that archaeologists are still trying to decode. It is believed that they may have used temporary platforms, braided ropes, wooden ramps, but no single theory fully explains it. That mystery, that absence of a definitive explanation, is what makes Karajía one of the most astonishing funerary complexes in the Andean world. If you move a little further, through the mist of the valley, another monumental complex appears, the mausoleums of Revache. Small funerary houses painted in red and white, with triangular roofs that imitate domestic architecture. They look like a village frozen in time, clinging to the middle of a cliff. Inside, archaeologists have found human remains, ceramics, textiles, and pigments. Each element tells a story: complex funerary rituals, symbolic offerings, and a deep understanding of the transition between life and death. But the daily life of this ancient people was also marked by height. Their circular houses stood on natural terraces or ones carved into the rock. They tamed the slopes to cultivate maize, potatoes, quinoa, and medicinal plants. They were surrounded by orchids, mosses, giant ferns, and trees covered in lichens that seemed to absorb the mist. And up in the foggy Andes, they built one of the most impressive complexes in Peru, Cuelap, with walls almost 20 meters high. A fortress and ceremonial center constructed long before Machu Picchu. There, among cyclopean walls, ceremonial plazas, and circular dwellings, a culture flourished that dominated this territory for centuries. But not even this deep connection with the mountain protected them from the advance of the Inca Empire. Their annexation into the Tahuantinsuyo was swift and forceful. Thousands of families were relocated far from their lands as part of imperial control strategies. Over time, the jungle reclaimed temples, paths, and houses. Even so, part of their legacy survived. And there is one detail that often goes unnoticed, yet completely changes the way we see this culture. In the Ley Mbamba Valley, several days' walk from these mountains, more than 200 mummies recovered from cliffs and hidden mausoleums are preserved. Their funerary bundles, the fabrics that wrap them, the position of the bodies, and the small amulets placed with them have allowed researchers to reconstruct aspects of their daily lives, their health, their diet, and even their social status. It is one of the most valuable keys to understanding who the ancient inhabitants of these mountains really were. These mummies, now kept in the Ley Mbamba Museum, remain one of the best sources for understanding their spirituality and social structure. And when you stand before these sarcophagi, suspended in the rock, looking out over the valley, a hard-to-describe sensation emerges. Silence is not absence. It is presence. It is memory. As if these figures were not there to be seen, but to remind us of something. And perhaps now you are asking yourself a single question. What did these ancient inhabitants understand about death that we have forgotten? Because if this legacy suspended over the void already seems extraordinary to you, wait. At the next destination, the houses are not hanging there to guard the dead, but because an entire community chose to live in the air. 3. Tujia, China. Hanging villages of Guizhou and Hunan. Imagine for a moment venturing into the mountains of southwest China, in regions like Guizhou and Hunan, where karst peaks rise like irregular columns wrapped in mist and covered in jungle. It is a landscape that seems to have no horizon, only vertical walls plunging down into narrow valleys, always humid, always echoing with the sound of water dripping from above. In this almost impossible environment, the Tujia people found a way to live what for others would be unimaginable. For centuries, this community built their homes in places where, at first glance, no human settlement should exist at all, on wooden platforms attached directly to the mountainside. These structures are known as diaojiaolu, literally hanging houses. Their architecture is a masterpiece of adaptation. The back of the dwelling rests on the rock, while the front remains suspended on pillars and beams that descend until they find a point of support. When the wind blows, the houses creak softly, as if they were breathing with the mountain. Inside these homes, daily life unfolded at heights that did not forgive mistakes. Have you ever stopped to think how a family could cook while living literally above the void? Meals were prepared on small wooden platforms suspended in midair, while children played on balconies hanging over the precipice. And the sound of the river, hundreds of meters below, reminded everyone what kind of world they lived in. Every movement had to be calculated, every habit learned from a very young age. Tujia spirituality was also shaped by the mountain. They believed in the spirits of the forest and the rock, invisible guardians who inhabited the heights. Before building a house, they carried out rituals to ask the mountain for permission. It was not just about construction. It was about learning to coexist with a territory that demanded respect. These hanging villages were not only beautiful, they were practical. In times of conflict, living at altitude made it easier to detect enemy incursions and protect the community. The mountains functioned as natural watchtowers. Whoever controlled the heights controlled the valley. But as in many mountain cultures, time and modernity began to transform this way of life. Many families moved down to more accessible areas, and some diaojiaola were left empty, turned into silent witnesses of another era. Today, some villages are preserved as cultural heritage, others are still inhabited, and others wait, slowly deteriorating, while the forest tries to reclaim them. Even so, when you look at these houses suspended over the void, with pillars that seem to defy gravity, you realize something. This is not just architecture. It is a form of resistance, a way of saying, we live here even if the mountain says otherwise. And if you have made it this far, it means that what you are seeing is gripping you as much as it grips us. If you are enjoying this journey through vertical cultures, this is the perfect moment to subscribe to CronoPlanet and keep being part of this community that is not afraid to explore the unknown. You are the reason we can keep climbing to these heights and descending into these silences. But don't leave yet, because what comes next is even stranger, more symbolic and more spiritual. The people who turned cliffs into elevated cemeteries and left their dead eternally facing the void. 4. Toraja, Indonesia. Funerary caves and Tautau guardians. In the heart of the island of Sulawesi, the mountains unfold like a maze of green hills, rice terraces that shimmer at dawn, and forests where humidity seems to float in the air. It is a landscape you don't just look at, you feel it. The mix of wood smoke, wet earth, and fermented leaves creates a scent that follows travelers from the very first step. Among these valleys lives the Toraja people, a culture that has turned death into a bridge, and the mountain into a home shared between the living and the ancestors. For the Toraja, death is not an abrupt end. It is a passage, a stage that must be accompanied, celebrated, and carefully guided. The Rambu solo funerals can last for days or even weeks. During that time, relatives arrive from distant villages. Processions are organized, prayers are recited, and buffaloes are sacrificed. A crucial element in Toraja cosmology. The buffalo is not just an animal. It is a symbol of status and, according to local beliefs, the one that helps the soul of the deceased ascend to Puya, the spiritual world. The higher the number and quality of the sacrificed buffaloes, the faster and safer the soul's journey will be. Tedong Bonga buffaloes, with their mottled skin, are especially valued. In Toraja markets, these animals can reach very high prices because their presence at the ceremony is an honor for the deceased and for the family. During these rituals, the body remains in the family house. It is treated with respect and traditional oils, and the family continues to live with it until the day of the funeral. For them, the deceased has not died. They are in transition. After the funeral, the ascent begins. The Toraja place their dead in funerary caves carved into the cliffs. Entrances cut several meters above the ground, niches that hold entire generations, and tunnels that seem to merge with the mountain itself. Reaching one of these caves requires skill. The rocks are damp, holds are minimal, and the paths are so narrow that they force every movement to be made with extreme care. Only those who have lived their whole lives among these cliffs truly know how to climb them. Placing the deceased in the mountain is not a practical choice. It is a symbolic one. Height brings the ancestors closer to the celestial realm. In front of some of these caves, on hand-carved balconies, stand the Tau Tau, wooden statues representing the deceased. Dressed in traditional fabrics, with serene expressions and outstretched hands, they appear to gaze over the valley from a balcony of the beyond. What few people know is that not all Tau Tau are the same. They are classified according to lineage. Only families of a certain status could afford a Tau Tau. Rank. Some represent local nobles, others community leaders. Age. The oldest ones have more geometric features, the modern ones more realistic traits. Function. Some guard the cave, others symbolize an entire bloodline. For centuries, these guardians have been the visible link between the living and the ancestors. Many have withstood humidity, wind, and rain. Others have fallen into the valley or been damaged by time. But all of them retain an imposing presence that turns the mountain into a living sanctuary. Traditional Toraja houses, the Tongkonan, also carry deep symbolism. Their upward curving roofs recall the ancient boats that, according to tradition, brought the first inhabitants to this region. The house does not belong to one person. It belongs to a lineage. The walls are decorated with geometric patterns in red, black, and yellow. Each symbol represents concepts such as fertility, protection, balance, or family continuity. The Tongkonan is more than a shelter. It is an archive of memory, and a social heart. Important decisions are made there. Rituals are held there as well. In some parts of the Karajía region, especially in Barupu and Pangala, a very particular ritual is practiced called maneni, or the cleansing of the ancestors. Once every few years, families open the tombs, carefully bring out the mummified bodies, clean their skin, change their clothes, and place them back in their elevated resting place. It is not a show. It is respect. It is the most literal way of keeping the lineage present. The ritual is always carried out with the family's permission and under a strong spiritual atmosphere. Communities perform it naturally. For them, it is simply reinforcing the bond with those who gave them life. After discovering these elevated caves, these watchful Tao, these funerals that last for days, and these bonds that even death cannot break, you might feel that you have already seen the deepest side of life at height. But no, what we announced at the beginning is still missing. The most extreme destination. The one that does not use the mountains to honor its ancestors, but to survive. What comes next is not a ceremony. It is not a cult. It is not an archaeological legacy. It is a people who live among precipices because they have no other choice. A vertical world where height is no longer a symbol, it is a shield. And where caves no longer protect the dead, they protect the living. Now we are ready for the final destination. 5. Yali, Papua, Indonesia. Vertical refuges in the jungle. Picture yourself entering a jungle where light barely reaches the ground. A place so humid that every leaf looks coated in dew and every trunk exhales vapor as if it were breathing. In this territory, the real challenge is not the vegetation, nor the climate, but the verticality. The mountains of Papua do not rise gently. They soar like blades. Sheer walls, moss-covered ravines, slopes so steep that each step can turn into a risk. This is the homeland of the Yali, one of the most isolated peoples of Papua, Indonesia. A people who have survived for generations in a landscape where solid ground is a privilege and height a vital strategy. Unlike other cultures that use caves as ceremonial or funerary spaces, the Yali turn to them as emergency shelters, located in almost inaccessible spots. When a rival clan threatens, when there are conflicts over territory, when the night fills with shouts or signals, the villagers move upwards, towards the rock, towards spaces so narrow that they barely allow you to sit. To reach these elevated caves, they use primitive ladders made from logs, plant fibers, and lianas. They are structures that would look almost the same, even if we went back 1,000 years in time. A single log, carved with footholds, leaning at an impossible angle against the wet rock. When anthropologists visited the area in the 1960s and 70s and documented these ladders, many described the experience as climbing towards the sky with no guarantee of ever coming back down. Inside the shelters, life shrinks to the essential. There is no room for luxury, large tools, or storage. Sometimes, only entire families curled up together can fit, listening in the darkness to the sounds of the jungle. Fire, when it is lit, is used to dry tools, preserve food, and keep insects away. Smoke becomes one more ally, soaking every object with a smell that, for the Yali, is synonymous with home. Traditional houses, unlike these refuges, are found on lower slopes. They are circular, made of wood, leaves, and cane, and are usually built close to taro, sweet potato, or yam fields. But none of these structures can withstand a sudden attack. That is why the mountain is their shield, a natural shield they have known since childhood. Life among the Yali is not only physical, it is also spiritual. Many of their rituals are tied to the mountain, the forest, and the ancestors. For them, the territory is not just land, it is memory. Every ravine, every stone, every narrow path has a name, a story, or a meaning in their oral traditions. In recent decades, contact with the outside world has increased, especially with the arrival of missions, air routes, and government programs. Even so, many Yali villages still live practically as they did centuries ago. High altitude remains an ally, isolation a form of protection, and the vertical jungle their only constant. And perhaps a logical question arises here. Had you ever heard of this people? Or is this your first encounter with their life in these impossible mountains? I invite you to share it in the comments. It will be interesting to read. Now, before we move to the closing, let me tell you one more thing. Something that is rarely mentioned, but that adds a layer of credibility and depth that completely changes how we see this region. The first reliable maps of Papua's mountainous interior date back only to the mid-20th century. Until 1938, much of these mountain ranges in the interior of Papua appeared on colonial maps as empty territory. People genuinely thought it was impossible for anyone to live there. It was during a reconnaissance flight, in the middle of an expedition led by American explorer Richard Archbold, that entire valleys populated by highland peoples suddenly appeared beneath the clouds. Villages surrounded by cliffs, crops on impossible slopes, and cave refuges that looked as if they were embedded in the mountain. That discovery changed the history of anthropology in Oceania. It proved that in the heart of New Guinea, there were communities capable of mastering one of the most extreme landscapes on the planet. Since then, the Yali have become a symbol of geographic and cultural resilience, a reminder that human life can flourish even in places where the modern world never imagined it could survive. And with this, we are ready to approach the end of this journey. But before closing, it is worth pausing for a moment to ask an essential question. What do all these cultures that chose to live at height truly share? The journey ends where it began, up high, in places where life should not exist, and yet it flourished. Each of these cultures found something different in verticality. The Dogon, a spiritual refuge. The ancient Andean peoples, a sanctuary for their dead. The Tujia, a suspended home. The Karajía, a bridge between life and the beyond. The Yali, a defense against a hostile world. All different, all separated by thousands of kilometers, yet united by one idea. Height not only protects, it transforms. It shapes life, rituals, beliefs, and ultimately, the way a community understands the passage of time. Perhaps that is why these cultures unsettle us so much, because they remind us of something we have forgotten, that there were times when survival depended on listening to the land, reading the rocks, respecting that which could not be tamed. Today, when we look at their caves, their hanging houses, and their silent guardians, we understand that they are not relics of the past. They are mirrors. Mirrors that reflect how we were before we distanced ourselves from the earth. And now I want to ask you, which of these cultures has impacted you the most? And why? Do you find it easy to understand their ways of life? Or are you surprised by how different they are from ours? Your perspective matters. Your comments help us continue to build these journeys. If you want to support this content, write the keyword for this documentary in the comments: height. And of course, make sure to subscribe to CronoPlanet and turn on notifications. Every week, we explore places where almost no one has been, and your support allows us to continue giving voice to stories that are about to be lost. Thank you for joining us. See you in the next documentary. Until then, may curiosity always take you a little further.